Pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance
To the
to the
flag
flag
of
of the United States of America and to the republic
for which
which
it
it
stands,
stands, one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for
for all.
all. Thank you, Tony. The chair's announcement under MGL Chapter 38, Section 20F, meeting being recorded, correct? Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 30A, Paragraph 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Westport Community Preservation Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to or review this meeting while in progress may do so by following the remote links listed on the posting online. An audio recording of this meeting will be posted on the town's website as soon as we are able. I've been continuing to have these meetings virtual because we have a member who will not come unless it's virtual. And things seem to be getting worse again. So I don't know what we're going to be doing for the next few months, but it looks like we will continue the virtual meetings.
Betty, I applaud you for doing this because other boards and committees are meeting in person, and I agree. I don't think it's entirely safe, and so thank you for continuing to do this virtually.
Okay. So the first item, or the only item on the regular meeting agenda is approval of the minutes of December 15th, 2022, which were distributed. Do I have a motion or an amendment?
I actually have an issue with something. I have to remember what it is, though.
Okay, you think about it. I think John Bell.
Yeah, Betty, on page 3, under historic Sanford school submission, it looks like it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph down. I think Jim had said the stained shingles, not weathered shingles.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's what I was noticing as well.
And
It's a weathering stain that they put on the shingles.
So they should be weathering stained.
Shingles with weathering stain would probably be better than weathered shingles.
Yeah, sounds like old ones. Maria, you got that? Maria?
She went away a little while ago. Maybe she's not
I'm
back.
here. I do have, I've got it. Thank you.
and on
Okay.
page 7,
Go ahead.
the 4th paragraph from the bottom, I believe it's Representative Paul Schmidt and not Congress.
What page
Page 7.
7?
Is that not the same thing?
He's not a
Congressman.
congressman. He's a
Congress would be our federal representative.
Ah,
He's a state representative.
thank you. Okay.
Anything else, John?
That's all I have.
Anybody else have anything, Tim? That was the one you had?
Yeah, I'll move to accept the minutes as amended.
Okay.
Second.
Second by Hugh Morton. Okay, any further discussion? Not hearing any. Let's vote. Hugh?
Hugh Morton, aye.
Garrett?
Jared Stuck, aye.
Mark?
Mark Schmidt abstains. He wasn't at the meeting.
John?
John Bell, aye.
Tim?
Tim Gillespie, aye.
Bill?
Phil Weinberg, aye.
Betty, aye. That is unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so we will now start our public hearing to review project proposals for recommendation for annual town meeting warrant FY '24. The first project is the historic town hall preservation and rehabilitation for $265,000. And I believe that Jim Hartnett, the town administrator, will address that. Just briefly, Jim, if you had anything else to say, or if people have questions.
Sure, just real quick, if I can just share my screen for a second.
Sure.
This is, I'm just gonna move over here. Hang on a second. We're gonna go to the next slide here. So thank you for entertaining this tonight. We're looking for roughly $265,000 from the community preservation funding. $150,000 would be used to upgrade the town's electrical service and to replace some of the electrical outlets and wiring here in the building. We actually had a little fire in here the other day with one of the old outlets, so it definitely needs to be done. And then an additional $115,000 for, preservation and replacement, mainly painting and repairing some of the trim work around the building. As you can see, it's in tough shape and it really needs to be done. This is part of an overall project, about a $900,000 project that we're working on. We just received a grant from the Green Communities for $467,000. We're the highest grant recipient in the state. I think the next closest was 200,000. So
Wow.
Congratulations.
that's
Good job.
That's good. And then in addition to that grant money, we're looking at about another $129,000 in utility incentives and rebates. So what this CPC funding allows us to do is we can use a portion of this for the match to this grant funding. So not only are we updating the electrical service and doing some work on the outside, but we can use that as a match to offset the grant that we're getting from the state. So this is something that's definitely needed. The heating system and we don't have any air conditioning. We have window units, which are all in tough shape and don't look very attractive hanging out the windows from the street. So I think the overall this is going to be a good improvement. We'd also be able to eliminate a lot of piping here in the building, even in the basement where they have the historic commission used to meet down in the basement. This would free up some headroom and some, just visually make that little area a lot nicer. So I think this is a good project, not only for the historic components, but overall for the town. So I'd ask for your approval or at least submittal to the town meeting.
I'll say for comments or questions, Hugh. I can't hear you, Hugh.
Tim, I think you said 457, but the slide says 499.
Yeah, what was it? 467 was the actual amount that they granted to us. We had requested 499.
Yeah, okay.
We do have some other funding available if we need to plug that. We're still waiting for the final numbers.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify
Yep.
this. This slide's
Thank you.
all-
So are there any other questions? So I'd like to again reiterate 2 points. One is that I believe on Monday night that the Board of Selectmen decided to put a non-binding question on the town ballot in April as to what to do with the old school. And I think that's correct, Jim.
That is correct, yes.
So we have the issue here that if the town decides to sell that property, then there is a discussion, and I don't know when this would take place, that these buildings, the town annex, the town hall, and the COA would be evacuated, and the officials, town employees would move over to the new school. And so at that point, just want to be sure that CPC is okay with continuing to grant these funds for these purposes. We have a choice, either say now that we would like to meet again, or 2, that just let it go ahead. I'm asking for your comments. You understand what I'm saying? Should we be awarding these funds if the buildings are not utilized by the town? I think that Jim wanted to make a response to that.
Yeah, just quickly, I guess maybe it's my own opinion, but I think the building itself warrants historic preservation, whether it's owned by the town or some other entity. I think the improvements that would be made to the building, and those would carry on regardless of the owner. So I think it's something that's worth preserving anyway. But I think in the long run, even if we did move to the high school, which I think is certainly not a done deal by any means, that could be a number of years down the line. So, thank you.
Okay, so basically you're saying this is a historic building. CPA funds are used for private and public historic buildings just for the purpose of historical preservation. And I assume the town would also put these funds into the building no matter what happens, right?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to. Our heating system is we're spending a lot of money right now just updating it and keeping it moving.
Okay,
Whether it's this year or a few years from now, it's going to be done.
you,
Well, I think probably everybody knows, I think the idea of moving everything into the old high school is insanity. But in the meantime, even if that were to happen, I think the schedule means it's safe to do this for two reasons. One, Jim makes a good point. The property needs it. And if it were vacated, then it would be sold. It'll be worth more being refurbished than falling down. But number two, the action to deal with this will not be until May town meeting. So we're doing a recommendation. And if over my dead body, the town decided that everything should go into the high school, we could always reconsider at town meeting itself. So it's a safe decision to recommend in favor, because we do have an ability to try to do, it's up to the town, of course, the town meeting, but pull the plug at the last instant if necessary. But it seems like a good decision, whether or not it works out that way.
Tim?
Yeah, I'd like to line up behind Hugh with my dead body. I think this building is definitely worth preserving. It is one of the real jewels in the crown of Westport's historic inventory of buildings. Just the history alone of how it was built during the WPA. I just think it's a great building. I love the building, and I think it stands as a monument to a time past when we valued how buildings actually looked, as opposed to what happens these days where they just build boxes with windows in them.
Thank you, Tim. Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Betty. I would say that I don't entirely agree with some of the previous comments, but that's neither here nor there. The high school building project is an extremely complex one, and I think it's right that the timeline is, if it were to happen, is going to be quite protracted. And this is, as has been said, it's an historic building, and I think we owe it to the employees of the town to have a decent heating system and proper electrical upgrades, because who knows how long they're going to be in that building. So one way or the other. So for those reasons, I certainly think this is a good idea and endorse it.
Garrett?
So I'd like to line up behind Jim and Tim and say that I think this is an important building. And I also think it's really important for the town administration to have a presence in Central Village. And so I think, no matter what happens with the old school, I really hope the town will continue to use that building, in one way or another. And I think it's worth fixing it up.
Okay. Anyone?
I would move we approve the project to move on to town meeting in the amount of $265,000.
I'll second,
Is there a
I'll
second?
second that, Jim Bell.
So I have a comment. My comment is there's a second issue. And kind of, the issue is, we talked about if the building is sold, if we give this the funds to the town, it would be with possibly, if you all think we should, with a stipulation that there be a historical preservation restriction on the exterior of the buildings, of this building. So there are two different things, completely different. One is, would we reconsider? The other is, we want to give these funds, but we also want to be sure that the building is preserved. And my question before you all talk is, what does Jim think about that?
Yeah, I guess first thought, I wasn't real excited, but I think overall, I think that's the whole purpose, right? We're trying to preserve the building. So I don't, personally, it's not my decision to make, but I think it's something that's worth considering and something that's worth doing.
So I am proposing that, oh, Tim, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that if the day does come when the town decides to dispense with that building, at that time, we could put a restriction on it. I don't think we really need to do it now because we still own the building, and I can't imagine the town doing anything disgraceful to the outside.
Well, it's happened in other towns, Tim. So the question is, you don't put it on now with the stipulation that if the building is sold, then there would be a historical preservation restriction on the outside, the external part. Does anybody, Hugh?
A question of ignorance. I'm familiar with the conservation restrictions and so forth, but in historic, someone hold the restriction? I ask that only because
Yes.
you have someone who holds it, then if circumstances change and you want to reconsider, there's someone who can do something.
Yes, someone would have to hold it, and it can't be,
Historical society, maybe?
pardon me?
Historical society, maybe? That's the question.
If it's sold, the historical commission can hold it.
Right.
So basically, it's a normal kind of historic preservation restriction. It would be a private building, and it would have a restriction on it, just like the Handy House. And the historic commission holds the preservation restriction on the Handy House.
So I'm with Tim on it then.
John?
Betty, I might have missed this because I hit the wrong button, but who draws up, who puts the restriction on? Is it the CPC as a stipulation to receiving that money? So we would draw up the restriction?
What we would do is, for now, is do a grant agreement with the town. That if this building is sold, that the town hall is sold, if the town agrees that a historic preservation restriction would be placed on the building at the time it is sold, and that would be held by the historical commission, and the CPC would pay for it. And we have people who draw them up. That's what they do. You know, we have somebody working on one for the Bell School right now, Eric Dre.
Now, would that just be for the facade of the building and not the interior?
Not the interior,
All right,
the external.
that sounds reasonable to me.
Mark,
Betty, are you envisioning that the restriction affects all four facade sides of the building? Or would there, because what I'm thinking of is, suppose it were to be sold and a private owner bought it and wanted to build an addition of some type because they needed more space. And if you restricted that addition to the back of the building so that it's not as visible from the street, which is the important part, could there be an allowance for some kind of a connection via, a glassed-in corridor or something that connects to the exterior? So you would be, in fact, maybe there'd be 3 windows that get taken out or something. I mean, could there be some kind of language that allows such a modification?
the in a historic preservation restriction, that all has to be stipulated in advance. However, as we've talked about before, there is an alternative to the restriction. The alternative to the restriction is not as strong, but it gives more flexibility. And that alternative is that the town agrees, puts it into the sales agreement, and the purchaser agrees that any change that's going to be made to any of the facades of the building must be approved by the historical commission. That's another way to do it. That gives it more flexibility. It takes in consideration what you're saying. It's less, it's harder to, I mean, it depends on the historical commission then, but if you're comfortable with that, then we could ask for that rather than a restriction. And I was going to bring that one up as the third alternative. I like the third one personally, because if we're going to try, we want to protect the building, save the building. We don't want it to be torn down. So if we want to do that, we can ask the historical commission, we can let them know the kinds of things we want, and they will be able to make the decisions, you know, if somebody wants to make an addition in the back or of that nature. So I would be comfortable with that. I don't know about others.
Yeah, I think that enhances the, you know, the value of the potential resale value if you take that approach.
Okay, so how about this? Should, as a part of the agreement, we would have a part of the agreement to supply these funds or recommend to town meeting, we would ask the Board of Selectmen to agree that if they sell this building, the town hall, that they would put a requirement that any changes to the external facades of the building must be approved by the historical commission. Does anybody disagree with that?
Sounds good.
Betty, I just have a comment there. I mean, it seems to me there's a fourth way, which maybe is in line with what Mark is suggesting.
We lost you.
Restriction on the front and the sides of the building. So basically the part that you see from the street couldn't be changed. But that any additions, you know, off the back would have to be approved by the historical commission. Maybe that's too complicated. I'm just throwing it out.
I would go with 3. The third one, that they will make a decision. You know, who knows what's going to happen in the next 100 years. So let's just don't, you know, there may be, you know, in the back, a road that goes through there. I mean, all kinds of things can happen. You just have to believe that the historical commission would make a good decision. I think it's too complicated to say 3 sides, no, 1 side, yes.
Okay.
Hugh,
I would go with, I think in the past history, the historical commission has not been somebody that got walked over. So I think they have a reputation of being pretty stringent. And that's reassuring that area. And leaving the flexibility in the hands of people who are not a doorstop.
thank you, Hugh. Okay, then we'll make a decision for recommendation to town to go on later after we have all the projects. But thank you very much. Jim, do you have any questions?
No, I think I'm all set. Thank you very much for your time.
You're all set. Thank you very much. Okay. The
Have a good night.
second, good night, Jim. The second,
Betty,
yes,
you haven't taken a vote on
no,
the motion?
no,
Okay,
which motion? You're correct.
Recommend.
No, she's talking about the motion for the,
to move this to the town meeting.
no, we do that later. We do
Oh,
that.
okay. Because
on
someone
item
made a
5.
motion already. All right.
Was it seconded?
Yes,
Yes. So,
and
Tim,
then there was discussion. Okay.
Tim, you need to withdraw your motion.
Withdraw, all right, I will withdraw my motion.
And the second was you, I think.
And I'll withdraw my
John
second.
Bell, yeah.
I'll withdraw it, John Bell.
But when we go to vote on this, we will include the
Okay,
role of the historical commission. We have to wait to see how much money is expended, that whole thing. It's just the procedure. Okay. Tony Vieira, the Sanford School Preservation and Rehabilitation, 180,000. Is
Yes,
there
Betty.
anything you'd like to say?
Well, we did survey our membership. We have a little over 100 members, 107 members at the time. We've lost some since, actually. But we surveyed them, and we had 2 or 3 that were negative. They didn't think we should go forward with this project. But all the others were really very supportive, and they felt it was a historic building in town, one-room schoolhouse, big history with the American Legion, and that it certainly deserves consideration to restore it. So we're moving forward with that based on our request to you folks, and it's up to you at this point. But as long as we're able physically, we'll continue to maintain it. Just to give you an idea, last 12 months, we spent $5,000 between utility costs and upgrades ourselves on the building. So we plan on doing that in the future. It's just that we're coming to you for this project because it's one beyond our means, and beyond our means financially as well as physically. So we need some help, and we stand with the proposal we have. We don't have all the specifications. We certainly have a ramp scheduled. We've talked, Tim and I, in the last week about having some of the description further detail for ADA compliance, but what we expect when we go out to bid, we're going to put the specifications to meet ADA requirements. So at this point, we think we're ready to go, but we're available and we can respond to questions now. There are a few other Legionnaires that are on this call, hopefully as well. They tried to anyways to get on.
Okay,
So we're
Tony,
available.
Tim wanted to say something probably about the handicap ramp. Tim?
Yeah, I talked to Ralph, the building inspector, about that railing system. And there's 2 standards that need to be complied with. One is the ADA, and the typical ADA railing has a top rail and a middle rail, and that's it. And it would have to have that. And then any part of that ramp that is 30 inches above the ground has to have something like a balustered railing or something that does not have any gaps bigger than 4 inches. So I am planning on drawing this up again. I could not find my old drawing file, so I would go measure the building again and redraw the whole thing and put in more details on that railing system.
By the way, we have that also from Paul Hebert Construction. But we weren't going to, we have to write up the specifications for bidding purposes anyways. When we get to that point, that's when the detail would take place. But I thought it was a bit premature to put the time and effort into it financially until we decided if that was the wishes of the committee to move forward. This has to be a kind of a joint commitment for the town as well. It's a town-owned building, and we'll certainly, as long as we're able, as I mentioned before, take that responsibility of leadership right now. But at some point, the town may have to absorb some of the costs or take over the building or whatever. So we're hoping that you see the value in preserving this building in the north end of town, not only from the American Legion perspective, but from the One Roof Schoolhouse. And I assume we'll have appropriate signage on that to reflect the building number 15 and some of the history associated with that, maybe with our historical commission and historical society as we move forward.
Tony, we can help you financially with CPA administrative funds with the signage.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be good. Tim and Tony, if you change the railings, isn't that going to increase your cost?
No, the cost that we have estimated included the railings. Hebert Construction had conversations with our building inspector before. The trouble is with Hebert, I didn't want Hebert to spend much more money in terms of a design diagram on it. he was doing everything for nothing, quite frankly. And the same way when we had the ADA compliance on the side door, the outside, the groundwork and so forth, we got estimates based on what they were doing. And sometimes it was written on a piece of paper. We have some of those in our proposals, kind of tough to read, but they were comfortable. They felt the prices they gave us could do the job and would be compliant with any kind of regulations at the town level and certainly at the community preservation and ADA compliance level as well.
Excellent.
I guess the only outstanding piece is the finalization of what type of shingles we use. And we would defer to other folks, but our price is based on the highest price of shingles at this point.
Okay. Are there any, Mark?
Just a question, because I wasn't here the last meeting to hear the full presentation, but this discussion about shingles, this is for the sidewalls, are we talking about, and not the roof?
Yes, Mark, the roof was done a few years ago. It's in very good shape.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Sidewalls then.
Just,
Thank you.
yes.
Hugh?
This is something, Tony, I'm sure you've considered, but looking at the diagram, I wondered whether there's a double barrel ramping heading up to it. That the one on the far right would be eliminated if you simply use the one in the middle and then lowered the angle of the receiving area there by the building. I
You
assume
can't
the
lower,
answer
you
is
can't
going
lower
to be
the
that
angle.
No,
That's,
the angles wouldn't work.
compliant
But I
with
want to raise the
code
question.
right there.
this is it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any, Hugh?
No, I turn it down.
Anybody else? Mark?
Sorry, but so I did mention, I guess it was the meeting before the last meeting, that if you raise the grade slightly, use some fill, so you're starting from a higher point, you can either shorten the overall length of this this ramp, or perhaps get so far as to eliminate that entire first leg.
It's a little bit tricky, Mark, because there's windows on that north side. They're covered right now, but there are windows. So we could do it, but we'd have to fill in that side as well. So the cost would go up to fill in the foundation where the windows are at. You can't see them right now, but they're in the north end there.
Well, there's a window, there's two windows that the ramp would go in front of, which you
Yeah.
can see in the drawing.
Yep.
But couldn't you fill in front of the ramp on the street side without going further back?
Oh, that's already elevated. It doesn't show it too well in that diagram, but there's an elevation and steps go. Well, you can see it further out, just to the left, the bottom left, Mark. You
Yeah.
see the steps going down. That's an elevation already with dirt. We could raise it up higher, but there'd be quite a hill there. It's up. Well, you can see there's 3 steps on each side already in the front. If we did that on the side, we could do it, but we'd have to raise the elevation and block out the windows, because we have cellar windows. There's a cellar floor there that's used. That's actually where the Legion would hold their meetings, in the lower level.
Right. Well, I guess I was thinking some kind of a little, raise the grade from the street toward to the base of the where Tim shows that platform in the front, or
Yep.
I'm not quite sure
Yep.
what this represents. Anyway, raise it up to about that height, and then perhaps extend a little retaining wall underneath it, so you don't have to fill back beyond that point and cover the basement windows.
I mean, we're open. It's again, I'd gladly meet you out there. We could walk through it, and as we did the specifications, it might vary somewhat on the price, but if anything else, it's probably going to be lowering the price, not increasing it.
This design generally was approved by the Historical Commission, wasn't it?
It was approved by the Historical Commission and was approved by the building inspector.
I think we're at that point, Mark.
But we're still open. I certainly will. I mean, Mark has a background in architectural work and so forth. I'd welcome his input. That's not a problem.
I'm not trying to complicate anything. I just wanted,
No.
I was just responding to some of the concerns about the length of the ramp and the amount of
All right.
raising and all of that.
So why don't
I-
you all get together and talk about it?
We've got some time to do that. I mean, we're not going to be doing any specifications for a month or two, I would think. The
Adjust-
earliest.
Adjustments always happen in these projects. So that'll be helpful, Mark.
Okay, well, if Tony wants to, or if I can get his email, I can we can arrange to meet out there briefly if that's
I'll do better than that. I'll
appropriate.
buy the coffee, Mark. I'll meet you out there. I'll call you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Can I say one more thing?
sure, Tim.
Those windows that are, the ramp is crossing in front of, we could reconfigure that ramp a little bit to push it away from the building so it's not right up against those windows. So those windows will still be functional and they could let some light in. The only issue there is that if you did that, you'd have to build a railing along the side that's near the building too. So it would add some cost, but it might mitigate anything you'd have to do with those windows.
I can show you some diagrams or some drawings from Hebert. He came up with about 4 or 5 different options. And we shared that when we were at, I don't know if Garrett was at that meeting where we met with the commission, historical commission. But this, we ended up with coming back to this one all the time. Tim's was actually the one that seemed to make the most sense in the long run. But we do have other options and we have gone through those.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Okay, the third item is the Town Farm Apartment Restoration, which suddenly appeared on the agenda. Tony Millam, actually it started, I was contacted because, you know, and Tony can tell the history a little bit, probably better than I can. So let's hear what Tony Millam has to say. Tony? We can't hear you. Can't hear you.
We can see you but not hear you.
I can't see him.
I see him. Do you want us to come back to you, Tony? While you get organized? You can use the chat.
Maybe his speaker on his computer is down.
Betty, can you hear me?
Who's speaking?
It's Mark. My whole screen is
Mark, I
frozen.
hear you. I hear you, Mark.
Yeah.
I don't hear Tony. I see you and hear you, but it's frozen. At least the screen is. Let's come back to Tony. Tony, you go off and come back on. It'll probably work if you do that. Turn it off, turn it back on. Relax. Let's move to the next project, and that's the WYAA. Is anyone here for that project? Is anyone here for the WYAA irrigation project? Where is, let me look and see who's here. No, no one's here for that.
Ken and I emailed each other during the day and I expected him to be here. I mean, he did,
Yeah,
so I don't know.
we can skip that for a few minutes and move on to the, we'll come back to those two. It doesn't matter in what order we do it. So we'll look at the Snell Creek property conservation restriction. Okay,
Yes.
Alan?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Great. I'm sorry, my camera's not operating properly, but I am definitely here, so
Go
thank you. I'm ready to say a few things if it's appropriate, Madam Chair.
Just quickly, yes, go ahead.
Absolutely. So
Ladies
at the
Development is interesting.
yes, so at the last meeting, specifically, we were asked about valuation for the proposed conservation restriction, and against odds that I had with others here in the office, we did get valuation information. An appraisal was provided to us yesterday. I had then forwarded that on. I believe
Yes.
you have access to it, but the sum up
Yes.
is that this independent appraisal valued the conservation restriction that's proposed at $240,000, well above the amount of funding that is being pursued by this application. So that was one good thing. The other thing I want to make the committee aware of was something that we were able to speak with the Board of Selectmen on this past Monday night. I was in front of them for an unrelated item, but it was in this neighborhood, and I was invited to say about anything else we had going on in town. And so I wanted to let the selectmen know, and I want to let the committee here this evening know that we have reached an agreement with Stephanie Cormier to sell her the front, what's to be created, a conforming frontage lot that contains the house and 80,000 square feet, slightly less than 2 acres around the property. I also provided a map showing that area. It does not affect the area of the acreage that we were proposing in the proposal from the get-go. We were hopeful, bordering on confident that we would reach this point. So our original proposal was to protect 29 acres of this property, the Snell Creek project. And in fact, ultimately, we are going to protect 29.5 acres. That's all wonderful. Those are the two things I wanted to make the committee aware of. As you recall, the chair, and I was happy about this, increased our ask from 100,000 to 150,000 so that we would not pursue the strategy of having a conversation with the Ag Open Space Council that could potentially add negatively to the town finances because of borrowing that would be necessary. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions committee members have, but we were pleased to be able to provide the appraisal and let you know about the pending sale of the house lot, which again won't affect the overall protection of the 29-acre parcel originally proposed. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Maria, we need to adjust that to 150,000 on the application. If you could do that on the digital as well as the physical. And so we received the appraisal. I've sent this around to all the committee members. CPC will also hire an appraiser to evaluate the appraisal that was done. We have to do that by law. We will do that hopefully before town meeting. Shouldn't be a problem. Are there any questions for Alan? Okay. Thank you very much, Alan.
You're very welcome. Thank you. I appreciate the time this evening.
Okay. Tony Millam,
Oops.
are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
My computer has an internal microphone that always seems to overpower my external one.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. The Westport Historical Commission and the town are asking for funds to do emergency repairs. There are 5 tasks on the addition or the L of the town farm, which is on the north side of the main building. And the first task is to replace and like for like fascia, soffits, and gutters. Those pretty much are shot and need to be removed and replaced. There are squirrels going in and out of the building through openings in those trim boards. So something needs to be done fairly quickly. So that's the major request we have for $30,000. Task 2 is to stabilize it. This is a very small task. Stabilize the screen storm door on the second story above the handrail that goes up to the second floor. Apparently that screen storm door is allowing water to get behind it and into the main building. So that particular project would be involving taking out the current screen door, trying to restore it. It seemed to be in pretty good condition, but also the trim around the door, and there needs to probably be an extension of the weather cap over that door above the header to try and keep the rain away from the building. Task 3 is to reshingle a 2-holer outhouse, sidewalls and roof, and replacing some of the trim, which needs to be replaced. I didn't want to go too much detail about how important these buildings are, but I probably should reiterate that the town farm represents probably the last intact town poor farm or poorhouse, or there's better terms for it, in the Commonwealth. And the buildings themselves are unique. They're all different. And the trustees of reservations who hold the long-term lease on the main part of the house are taking care of the barn, another outhouse, and a corn crib. But there are several small buildings to the north of the L, including the carriage house, which you can see in that picture in front of that truck. And then behind the carriage house to the east are 2 small structures. One is a 2-holer outhouse, which was repaired at some time in the past, but needs reshingling again. Then the task 4 is to repaint the carriage shed north tin shingle roof with heavy duty silver roof paint. This has been done in the past and needs to be done once again. Any of you have driven south on Drift Road and looked at those tin shingles, they're one of the last roofs in town that still has tin shingles on them. And so they're an important part of the fabric of the whole building. Task 5 is to replace an existing 15-year-old gas hot water heater, which is reaching the end of its useful life. If you have any questions, I could go into more detail why this building is important, but I'm sure you probably understand.
So Garrett and Michael Walden, I think Michael Walden is here. They're on the Historical Commission, and it was they who brought these issues to me, and then we all met, and then we brought Tony Millam. We met with Jim Hartnett, and Jim Hartnett very honestly said that don't give it to the town to do something with. You've got to deal with this yourself. Michael has been handling Garrett, because he's treasurer, has been handling the trust. The trust has very little money left in it, and the amount of money given each year for this purpose of maintenance is very little. There is a woman who's been renting for many years, and she's still there and plans to stay on. But it just seemed to me when they came to me that this is an emergency, the kinds of things that are happening. and that CPC is the proper place to come to ask for a grant. Are there any questions about the project from anybody? Hugh?
Well, this isn't really a question, but I just want to add that the oil tank and so forth had major problems, and an emergency request was made to the FinCom day before yesterday on that subject. So Tony hasn't mentioned that. I think it's going on a parallel track. Presumably that should be folded into this project.
Okay. So it sounds like that we have a positive response to it. No more questions. We will vote later to send it in. Garrett?
I just wanted to respond to Hugh's comment. And I think that we hope that the oil tank could be folded into this proposal, but since it was an emergency, I think that's already been taken care of by the town out of their reserve funds.
Well, I can speak to that, that we, the FinCom, I'm a member of, approved that on Tuesday, but I'm sure that with Jim's approach, things can be rearranged within the town.
Tony?
Yeah, just one note of looking ahead to the future. This L on the project has been underfunded for maintenance and repairs for the last 5 years, and it's been dependent on a trust fund that started at $50,000 and is now down to, I'm not sure, it's less than 6,000 anyway. Might have disappeared into the oil tanks. I'm not sure. But what we probably should be doing, just to reassure the committee that we're not going to be back in front of you every year for this type of repairs, is to try and convince the Board of Selectmen to allocate more money from the rents for this property that would provide creating a maintenance schedule for the L and the outbuildings, so that we can handle a lot of the smaller projects through that funding.
That was a point I was going to make, that this is an income producing structure, since there's a tenant who pays rent, but of course it goes to the general fund and doesn't show up for maintenance. So it's not as big a drag on the town as it appears to start with. Tony's point is a good one.
And we appreciate the fact that the Historical Commission, I mean, originally it was through Geraldine Millam, who labored over this for many years. And we asked Tony to help us, and he's agreed that he will be helpful for this. We really appreciate it. This is a terribly important building. I mentioned to Jim that I wish there was a complete restriction on the whole property, historical preservation, as well as conservation restriction. But for now, I don't think we have to worry about that, but maybe someday. Any other questions? So thank you all.
Thank you.
So we'll go back to irrigation. Hugh, you normally deal with WYAA, and you've heard this project several times. So you want to say anything about it?
Nothing new. I mean, we had heard about the irrigation last time, and they're getting more bids, et cetera. It seems to be merged on track, but they don't have any precise figures because that was a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Betty, Ken is here.
Okay, Ken.
Hello, good evening.
Hi.
My reminder failed me tonight. My apologies for this.
Well, you-
I knew about it this morning. I shared correspondence with Maria this morning, and the timer didn't go off. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So I don't have any new quotes. We've got another company coming out next week, per Brian, on our board, to take a look and measure and see what those quotes going to. But I don't have anything to add to it tonight.
So you're still asking for 180,450?
Correct, same ask.
Cover possibly it'll cover the wells, the irrigation system. Okay.
Wells, irrigation, and generators. for the wells.
Generators.
Yep.
Are there any questions? Okay. Listen, you can listen to us later to see how we vote, but it'll be,
Great.
accurate. We got all the projects in. Thank you
All right.
very much, Ken.
Thank you all. Sorry again.
Okay, the next project is the town playground project, and that's Dana Stewart and Tim Gillespie. They presented some of it to us last meeting, and whatever else you want to present today, please do so. I don't know who's speaking.
Thank you very much, Betty, and to all of you for reviewing our application for the playground improvement project that we have proposed. We are respectfully requesting $350,000 for CPA funds. And we consider, I want to reiterate what Tim had mentioned earlier in an email to Betty, that we consider the CPA money to be seed money for the larger project. And with the town's support through CPA, we have more leverage to engage partners to raise the rest of the funds needed. So since our last meeting last month, I did have an in-person meeting with Gina Palmer, the bank manager of the Bay Coast Bank in Westport off Main Road. It was a very good meeting. She personally felt that this kind of project would be a great benefit to the community and something that Bay Coast would, no question, want to get involved with. She passed on the information to Mr. Nicholas Christ, who is the president and chief executive officer of Bay Coast Bank, and he provided us with this letter of support for our efforts. I think that's a very nice indication that they would also want to help contribute and get involved. They do have an application process that we can move forward with, but it's a perfect example of, you know, if the town is committed to helping with this project, we really feel that other important local businesses and partners within the community will also come on board. Since our last meeting last month, I've also been researching grants and different funding opportunities too to help our vision. And there are several grants that we can apply for this summer, which I hope would then again help our efforts. And I have also been trying to approach other local businesses to see if they have interest in possibly financially support this kind of project. And it's all been very good so far. The other thing that we did want to better engage or get some knowledge of is the condition of the Bicentennial Playground. When we spoke last, we talked a lot about the Annex Playground. That is the older playground, which is 28 years old, is made of wood and is rotting and splitting and in not good shape at all. The Bicentennial Playground is not made of wood, but also has a lot of issues. So we were able to find out that the company that did install that equipment at Bicentennial Playground was Game Time. And so I had a Game Time representative go out to look at the equipment to see what his take on it was. And he said that there's so much significant rust. He is also recommending replacement of that playground. So I mentioned that because it just goes to show that, you know, this is a large project. We recognize that, and we feel that we also recognize that 350,000 is a large amount as well. That being said, from our research in various companies and with the space that we have at the Annex and then Bicentennial, which is even a larger space, there is we estimated 700,000 to $1 million in estimated costs for the total improvement of both playgrounds. So I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have, or the vision that we're trying to have for these playgrounds and or the research that we've done thus far.
I apologize for not having photographs of Bicentennial. Dana has done a lot of that, and I tried to accumulate everything that we had, but I haven't found the Bicentennial ones, but we showed them the last time. You may recall that there was a lot of pictures of rusty and rotting bolts and things.
Correct. The most significant damage in my mind is the rusted out stairwells within the playground structure itself at Bicentennial. We did get a quote for replacing just the stairwells. And it was $7,000 to replace 2 sets of stairwells within that playground structure, but that doesn't include the installation cost. In addition, to replace missing swings, it was $1,300. And then if we want to make our playgrounds ADA compliant and put down rubberized surfaces on the ground, that it on average $100,000. So I was given the analogy of how much money are you going to put into a 23-year-old, playground, or, if you imagine it's a car before you get a new one. So, it's that debate, like how much money do we put into the existing structure when it's really toward the end of its life? Both playgrounds.
Are there any ARPA funds available for this?
Yes, I did attend an ARPA fund meeting. I did speak to the group about how we have applied for a capital project request. We've applying for CPC funds, and I did ask about the procedure to apply for ARPA funds. Members did seem interested in this project, but we have not officially given an application yet. The overall feeling I got was they felt it was a CPC type of project, and that if there were additional things that we needed, we could probably look to ARPA as well.
Mhm. For the newer members of the CPC, Tim Gillespie is on the Recreation Commission, and he has been its representative since the very beginning of CPC. He's been here since 2002 or 3.
Whenever CPC started, that's when I started.
Yeah, and Dana works. She's our recreation person. So
Yes, I'm the recreation director for the town.
Yeah, sorry, repeat that.
Yes, I'm the recreation director for the town.
Okay. Hugh, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect. A lot of work is being done, a lot of activity going on. I would take the CRIST letter of support seriously as a possible source of funds. As far as the other grants are concerned, I hope I'm wrong, but I think it's sort of pie in the sky. You can always apply for things, but applying and getting are 2 very different things. And I found a lot of trouble with the amount of resources that they're going to charge. If the salesman comes out and looks at things, the odds are pretty good he's going to say you should buy something new. So I would put them aside. I guess what I come down, I think we talked about the last time around, a hunting license, in a sense. We talked about that as giving some credibility. And I think the figure, something like 150,000 was mentioned. That's not a commitment by anybody to anything. But I think I would be inclined at that sort of something that shows some support at a relatively moderate figure that could be shown to people, hopefully could get grants. But the 500,000 to $1 million kind of thing, I know those are just envelope figures. I just do not see that a proper use of the resources of the town. I'm sorry.
Dana, did you take any look at from the coalition's website about other towns?
Yes, so I have been also doing research about other towns and where they are also getting some of their funding. Forgive me, I'm gonna have to open it up. If you give me 1 second, I think Tim raised his hand too. Maybe he could talk while I'm looking for it.
Yeah, I would just address what you said about the used car salesman mentality of the guys that are trying to sell us a playground. We've been through this before. And the way you deal with these guys is you sort of cherry pick the things that you want, and they provide what you ask for. They suggest things, But when we tell them we're on a limited budget and we need to fit it into that budget, they will help us get to that number with the equipment that they have. They're not going to push us over the top because we're not going to have the money to we don't have an open checkbook.
Yeah, I'm sure that's right. When it comes to the stage of when you've got an idea of what the budget is, et cetera, you can push them into the budget. Meantime, if they're asked what you should do, they're going to understandably try to sell you something rather than rehab something. It's part
Well,
of
we're not
proving-
reinventing the wheel here either. We've been looking at other towns and what other towns have done and have been shocked at how much money they've had to spend to get a current playground. It's just, it is pretty crazy stuff, but it seems to be what happens these days and how much this stuff costs. The annex playground is not huge, so I suspect that'll be the lesser expensive project, but I think it's going to be more than $350,000. But how much more, who knows? Maybe it'll be 500,000. I don't know. That's what we're working on.
Yes. So the Tiverton Town Farm Playground, that was approved, I believe, summer of 2021. And forgive me, I don't know if it was approved or is finished in 2021. They received a $375,000 grant from the Department of Environmental Management and Green Spaces. They also received $5,000 legislative grant from Representative John J. Edwards. So that's one example. So that's 380,000 right there. In Dighton, their North Dighton playground at School and Prospect Streets, they received 210,000 of Community Preservation Act funds, and then they were able to receive 37,000 of in-kind contributions, and also their highway department donated materials, helped with some of the work, and they were able to get volunteers to help with the installation. So those are a couple examples. I know that Dartmouth also, they just received over 500,000, I believe, from their CPC group or CPA group for their newest park project, which they're estimating to be, I believe, over a million or more. Now that might involve a lot more space, obviously, than our two sites. But those are just some local examples.
I applaud you for pursuing grants and so forth. I'd throw out Tiverton because that's a different state, so everything is different. I wouldn't take that seriously at all. But as far as other grants within Massachusetts or other organizations, I'm all in favor of what you're trying to do. I just don't see the money at the levels we've been talking about. And I know things cost a lot that we think should sometimes, but you still have to make your suit to fit your cloth. So I'm not saying the only figure I'd ever approve was 150, but I'm just saying an order of magnitude of something useful that gives you some ability to say we've got support from the town. That's fine. It's a matter of where I at least draw the line, and hope you can do well in getting grants from people, because that is, as I should see the answer. If you can, that's great.
John?
I'm reading the minutes. I saw in there that, Dana, you were going to try to find out how much the school paid for theirs. And
Yes, I wasn't able to find that out, but I was told that that school project is finished.
now they got a brand new one up there. You think we still need two?
So that one is the school playground and it was also built by a Compan company, which is one of the playground companies that we looked into. And they were actually the most expensive quote that we've gotten so far. So I am still interested to know what the school ultimately paid for their playground. I just don't know at this point because they didn't get back to me.
Finance committee should know, Hugh.
No, that's the schools.
You don't hear?
That is a dark hole of information sometimes. No,
So-
we
so-
take their budget, et cetera, but we're not involved.
Yeah.
Actually, Tracy Priestley was the liaison who was now
Okay.
gone. So
With the
she might have known, but she's not available at this point.
Right. Garrett?
So two things. So first, Dana, I wanted to give you another example of funding. I know that about $250,000 of ARPA.
You're breaking up, Garrett. We're not hearing you. Still can't hear you, Garrett. Maybe you could phone us? Call us?
You would need to know the number.
Oh, they don't give it, do they? It's not given at the, yeah, I don't have the number. But I think he was trying to say that he knows of other use of ARPA funds. So we need to, if he can get back on, we'll come back to him.
Betty, I'm back, I think.
Okay, you
Right.
are.
So yeah, my first point was about the ARPA funds that other towns are getting them. I think Westport should pursue it as well.
Yep.
The second,
I totally agree.
the second point I wanted to make is that if we can judge by the current playgrounds, these playgrounds have a lifetime of about 30 years. And so I think when we talk about a capital expenditure like this, we have to keep in mind the lifetime of what it is that we're buying. And that makes it, to me, that makes it more palatable.
You forgive me, Garrett, you were saying like the lifetime of a new playground.
Would be about 30 years. What can you tell us?
Yeah, it's definitely longer than now with the more modern materials that they use. I have not heard the quote of 30 years, but that is also something that I can investigate. I don't know if that figure would change with whichever playground company you talk to, but it's definitely longer than the older playgrounds.
Yeah, I was just extrapolating from the current playgrounds, which are about 30 years old.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen research where they say playgrounds should be renovated or replaced after 10 to 17 years. But I don't know the research with that, like if it's playgrounds from what era, right? So I don't know.
That's probably more like a wooden playground, like the one at the annex.
How is the security at the playgrounds?
So because it's an open park space, it's play at your own risk and use at your own risk. We do have signage up there saying that, and I believe at the annex, I would have to double check at the Bicentennial, and I mean, we don't have around the clock surveillance there. I have a person who lives near the Bicentennial Playground. When she notices something wrong, she contacts me, and then I contact the police if needed, or the appropriate person to maybe go by.
Betty, we don't really have many issues at the annex playground at all. The Bicentennial one with the basketball courts and the bicycle thing in the back. Yeah, we get some issues over there every now and then.
But are they, what kind of issues, John? I mean, are they destruction or?
Yeah, a lot of vandalism, after kids hanging out after hours and stuff like that, noise complaints.
I'm more worried about the vandalism as far as CPC is concerned. Tim, I remember this being an issue some years ago. There was a couple of park projects that we had some years ago.
Yeah, we did a fairly light duty renovation of the wood chips at the annex playground, and that's been done again since we did that. We bought some new structures that for that playground and removed some that were kind of beat up, and we upgraded some of the swings that were there, and everything is degraded since then. And
The one structure at Bicentennial that you added, Tim, I believe is in still good shape.
yeah,
It's like it's separate from the actual larger climbing structure.
Yeah, yeah. We added some stuff to the bicentennial. We put some benches in, didn't we? And some things like that.
Yes, and certain aspects obviously that are newer and in fine condition would stay.
Yeah.
I remember a few years ago, there was vandalism at the annex playground. Something or other, I can't remember exactly which it was, but it cost something like $5,000 to replace. So that was not age, that was vandalism. I think whatever you're saying is accurate. It's not a lot of it, but it can happen.
Mhm, mhm. I think I mentioned last time that there was a revision of the CPA, the Community Preservation Act, in which they increased the ability of playgrounds to be replaced, because before they had to be set up with CPA funds before they could be replaced. So now they don't have to be. So it sort of, that kind of change in the law made me think that that there was a lot of interest in Massachusetts for playgrounds, that this was something people really wanted. So I just wanted to make that point. John?
Yeah, Betty, playing off of that, I think you get a lot of good, lack of a better term, good press for the CPC by doing it, especially if we get the signage up there that says, a lot of it was donated. The money came from the CPC. I think a lot of parents use this park. A lot of Westport residents use the park, and I think we can get a lot of good publicity out of it.
I think both of them are important. Definitely. And they're different parts of town.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I know that other towns have done official, like, groundbreaking events and or opening events of their local playgrounds where the press is there, the community comes out, and they're really nice events that show the good hard work that the community's done to create those playgrounds.
And I think, Dana, if you did that, and then in conjunction with behind the annex, the facilities there, if you could have like a double,
Yeah.
because we haven't done anything.
Yes,
Because you were still working on it.
correct,
So
right.
we'd like to go ahead and so forth, but that's
Yeah.
almost done now.
Yeah, we'd like to exhaust those funds. We're very close to that. And I agree. I think we could have a grand opening of that space as well, even a naming ceremony of sorts. So yes. Mhm.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have one more project. Sorry to have kept you waiting so long, Bob Barboza. He's going to talk about the Affordable Housing Trust project.
I don't have any documentation for that.
Oh. Well, he does.
I couldn't find it.
Oh. Anyway, Bob. Bob?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Okay.
Can you post post the submission or not? I got it here. Anyway, go ahead and explain it. It's not very complicated.
No, we really don't have a project in the formal sense of the word. We're just looking for some money to help underwrite our operations for another year. So we don't have to transfer money that's earmarked from one of our programs just to run and staff the office. Because we don't.
Could you tell us the developments with the Leonardi and anything else?
We have a contract signed and agreed to and partially signed. It should be official by the end of the week. Leonardi is coming back to be the trust consultant for affordable housing services.
But under different circumstances, right?
Well, he'd be working on more projects, grant applications, that kind of things, and less office administration and accounting, bookkeeping, all that stuff.
So it'll be less time.
Well, unfortunately, with the new contract, the rate has gone up considerably, so we're still looking for the same amount of services, basically $40,000 per fiscal year. And so he'll probably be doing less, administrative work and more real consulting and grant writing.
Is there anything going on, any projects underway, looking at properties to purchase, any of that?
Probably as soon as he gets back, we'll put out a request for proposals for people interested in selling land and try to get another large scale project going. Our basic problem is, since the town doesn't make any financial contribution to the trust and affordable housing in general, we have very little income coming in. It's either recaptured funds or small amounts of revenues. So
Or CPA funds?
right.
Mhm.
So if we don't get CPA funds to run our programs, we're going to have to cut back on either a home purchase program or a home rehab program or, large scale development, and transfer those funds just to keep operations going.
Mhm. So there hasn't been any additions to the SHI? Nothing.
Yeah, we had two units added for rehab projects that were done. When we grant out that money, they come with an affordable housing restriction, and they count on the SHI. And we'll have two new ones coming on next year with the Habitat for Humanity duplex going up on Salem Road,
Right.
which, took a large chunk of our money last year. It cost us a couple $100,000 to try to get two new units. We sold them the land for $1 and gave them some development underwriting money. So that took out a big part of our budget this year.
So there's been nothing about larger scale projects. We've allocated 400,000, I believe, in the last few years towards the purchase of land for larger scale project. Nothing's happened on that. That's just sitting there, that money.
Right. If we could find a piece of land to get another project going, we would certainly do that. But the price of land these days, $400,000 doesn't go far.
Hugh, you have a question or comment?
You were asking the questions I was going to ask. So
Oh,
one question I was going to ask you is, how much money is there for acquisitions? And there haven't been any other than the Habitat for Humanity, I believe, project. Rehab, I understand, but I assume there's 400,000, you said?
yeah, that's what I know that we've given. The PA
Well,
fund given.
There's $210,000 now budgeted for land acquisition. And we also have another program called SEED, which would subsidize private development, doing a project of 10 units or more. We have $200,000 budgeted for that.
I guess the question I was asking, is there anything in the pipeline, or are these static funds that are sitting there on the books, but no particular reason to think they're going to be needed in the near future?
There's no projects in the works. We're always looking at when Chapter 61A land comes up. If it's available, you have 90 days to match the purchase price and have the town, the town could assign us the rights to purchase.
But that's by market value, obviously.
At market value, right?
And you don't have any, you've not seen any land that's owned by the town that's available?
They've looked at several parcels. There's no immediate plans to pursue any of them. If the high school redevelopment project goes forward, we've presented a couple of options for including affordable housing at that site. Whether the building is retained or even sold, it could be subdivided and get a parcel.
Mhm.
But the figures in the high school are something like 30 to 30 million or so, and I can't see how that's in anybody's budget.
So you're not approached by people like community builders, right, Bob? Or do you go to them, they don't come to you? Is that the way it works? Like for Nookwachoke, they did it with community builders and they run it and that worked. But they don't.
Right. Typically how a partnership like that works, the town has a parcel in mind and request proposals from nonprofits or other developers to do something there. And, that proposal would include probably requesting some kind of subsidies from the trust or the town.
Mhm. Okay, I think that Mark had a question. Mark.
Yeah, thanks. Well, actually, you just touched on it, the subject of the old high school. And as I recall, Bob, you can correct me, but I thought your Affordable Housing Trust under Leonardi a year, 18 months ago, I don't know what, gave a fairly in-depth, comprehensive presentation or program for converting the building into affordable housing. Or was it just a portion of it? But if that's correct, it might be helpful because this, as I said earlier, the ideas that go around and they literally go around in circles on this. Sometimes we get back to the beginning and it might be, and we've got new faces on the committee, the long-term building committee. And Brian Valcourt is now the chair. Perhaps you want to, if I'm correct, if you want to forward that proposal that you made back when
We submitted that proposal to the long-term building committee and they looked at it. It's one of the options on the table if the town decides to develop it for municipal use. I mean, you could, if you are looking for options, you could use part of it for apartment or group living. You could use part of the land for freestanding small scale development, or you could, if you want to give up the ball fields, you could use the whole site and put another Nookwachoke village there. But it depends which way the town wants to go. We have filed, a fairly comprehensive proposal looking at 3 different options for using the building, using the land, or using a portion of the land.
Okay, so these are questions. Hugh, you want to?
I'm just going to ask if that proposal had done the financial analysis and due diligence of the economic side of things.
No, not at all.
That's what I thought.
It was just a concept plan that if you want to rehab part of the building, we would go out and get estimates and, decide to figure out how much it costs to make 6 apartments there or to take a 3-acre piece of that campus and put up a couple of duplexes. Every option would be different and they're all based on current, building estimates. It's not something you could project 2 years ahead what it might cost you.
Okay, so back to the, so they're asking for 60,000 to continue the housing office. Any more questions? Okay, thank you, Bob. We will now be looking at money.
Thanks for your time.
Mhm. Okay, so Tim, please put back that table. You turned it around and it was perfect. Are there any questions about the table? It's the same one I gave last year with different numbers. I'm willing to answer any questions. Don't hesitate if you don't understand something. I guess everybody understands everything. So basically we have reserves of 972,000 and we have new revenue projected of 934,000. So we have a total of $1,907,548.87 available to us to grant funds. The projects are on the other side of that page, Tim. Can you turn it? So every year, CPC has to put its projects and its source of funding, which would either be reserves or estimated fund revenues, as a warrant article. This needs to go in early February. So what I've done here is I've put all the projects at the amounts that have been requested. How did I come to the source of funding? I tried to use up the reserves which are specified. And then after that, it's just a combination that works. I mean, if you did it, you'd probably do it a little bit different, but it really in the long run doesn't make any difference. And this year, because we have we need to have reserves, which we need to have 10% of our total funds available as reserves for that particular category. And the only one which don't have enough in the project is community housing. And that's why you see 34,000, okay, for the community housing reserves. So this has been approved by Nicole, our accountant. Yesterday she approved, she looked at both of them, sent me back an email. It's been with her for a while. Sent me back an email and said, it sounds good to me. So just so you know, there are enough funds for all these projects. And so we need to go into the next item of the voting on recommendations. And I'd like to know how you wish to do the voting. Do you want me to read off each one? And if you want to hold, you just say hold. Should I do it that way? Mark?
Betty, I just have a question. Is under the historic preservation for the Sanford School, you have, this sheet has 265,000. Is that the right amount, or is it the 180?
Should have been one. Good, you caught an error. Excellent. You caught it and she didn't. That's 180. 180. So estimated fund revenues would be 180, okay? Doesn't change anything other than that. So should I read through it and you say hold if you want to hold it?
As a two-phase approach, what I would recommend.
You would recommend that approach?
I would.
Okay. All right, starting with open space and recreation. Please tell me hold if you want to hold it. Snell Creek Conservation Restriction, 150,000, financed by estimated fund revenues of 150,000. The WYA playing fields irrigation, source of funds, estimated fund revenues of 189,000. Town playgrounds project, 350,000. From undesignated reserves of 350,000. Community housing, the Affordable Housing Trust Office, 60,000, financed by estimated fund revenues of 60,000. The Town Hall restoration, 265,000, financed by budgeted reserves, which is a form of undesignated reserves. And estimated fund revenues, 151,000 budgeted reserves and 114,000 estimated fund revenue. Historic Sanford School restoration rehabilitation, 180,000 from estimated fund revenues of 180,000. Historic Town Farm apartment preservation, 36,625.
Hold.
Pardon me?
Hold.
Hold.
The only reason I say hold is, do we need, if we're going to fold in the oil project, et cetera, we need to revise that at some point. Maybe not now, but I just
You
meant,
want to take out the amount that was set aside for the oil tanks, right?
not take out, put in.
It's in there. It's within
I
the
didn't-
36.
I didn't hear it in the presentation. I know it from the finance committee side, but that's not
Yeah,
part of this.
it's in there. Let me see.
Okay.
Let me get it.
No, Betty, I'm pretty sure it's not in there.
Yeah, it's not in there.
Wait a minute. I'm looking. Did you take it out?
Yeah, the water heater
Oh,
replacement.
you got the water heater.
Yeah, but not,
But not the oil.
I guess they didn't ask for it. I'm sorry. So,
We just got that yet Tuesday at the FinCom, and it was an emergency, still sort of being worked on. The town's gonna do some stuff.
how much?
The estimated figure's around 15, but it's still iffy. We can probably pick this up at a later date, but I just wanted to mention
I
that it's not in there.
need to do it. We really need to. So you want to add what we could add that to it,
I would add a room and off back of an envelope, 15,000.
15,000. So that is
51,625.
Thank you very much.
Betty,
Yeah,
Betty, under historic preservation, water heaters and oil tanks fall into that?
yeah, they fall into it. Furnace. It's called rehabilitation.
All right, just
Okay, so then the money will come from 51,625 from estimated fund revenues. Okay, then community housing reserves, 34,000. I should probably put what that's out of too. FY estimated fund revenues. Never have before, but I will this time. Can't come from anywhere else. Administrative funds, 35,000. From FY 24 estimated fund reserves of 35,000. And then the budget reserves is left over. If you give me some room there, let me calculate everything else and decide what the budgeted reserves is going to be. You understand what I mean? The budgeted reserves is basically the amount of estimated fund revenues you don't use. But since it's estimated, you try to be very conservative. So it may be 50, it may be less. I will calculate that. So it looks like we should be taking a vote. I have no holds because we corrected it. Could I have a motion?
Betty, one more question before you proceed on the
Sure.
the vote. Did you, for the playing fields, you have, is it 189,000?
Right?
But I thought that, again, I thought the request was 180,450.
I think that we decided to make it 189. Wait a minute.
Well, that might be, I don't know.
184.50.
The,
Oh.
the,
Okay.
the minutes from last
These are
month.
very good points, 184.50.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, and so I'll change that. I thought somewhere I wrote that it was changed. Any more adjustments? Thank you very much for catching those. I can see you studied them for hours. So, do I have a motion?
I move we advance the recommended amounts and the source of funding to the town meeting warrant.
I'll second the motion.
Second. Second by Hugh Morton. All righty. May I have, is there any further discussion? I have a vote, please. Hugh?
Hugh Morton, aye.
Mark?
Mark Schmidt, aye.
Tim?
Tim Gillespie, aye.
Garrett?
Garrett Stuck, aye.
John?
John Bell, aye.
Anybody else that I missed? Mark? I think
Phil,
I'll get him in a minute.
Mark Schmidt, aye.
Phil?
Phil Weinberg, aye.
Okay, I think that's it. All
Betty
right.
Slade didn't vote yet.
I did. I said yes. So that's I should be last, shouldn't I? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Now, the business I stuck on there, correspondence, we've already discussed. Bills.
We have.
There were 4 bills, list of bills that have been paid, and one that is considered to be paid, that have been paid is $205 for town records preservation, phase 4, to Hudson Microimaging, $861.98 to Home Depot for gravestone restoration supplies. It's not cemetery department, but gravestone recreation supplies. East Bay Media for the public hearing publication was $78. The Holmes Plumbing and Heating is for the FY21 Town Hall Annex. And that is, they have been approved, and I'm asking for approval of the Community Preservation Coalition dues, which we pay each year, which is what, $28.75?
I think that is correct.
Okay. Is that correct, Maria?
That sounds like the right amount. I'd have to go back.
$28.75 is correct.
Yeah.
I've got the bill right here.
Mhm.
Okay. So do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll move that, John Bell.
You'll move approval?
Approval of the bills and the dues.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Hugh Morton.
Hugh Morton seconding. Okay. Is there any further discussion? May I have a vote? Phil?
Aye.
Phil Weinberg, aye. Hugh?
Hugh Morton, aye.
Mark?
Mark Schmidt, aye.
Tim?
Tim Gillespie, aye.
Garrett?
Garrett Stuck, aye.
John?
John Bell, aye.
Did I miss anybody?
You.
I know. Timothy Gillespie. Betty Slade. Aye. That is unanimous. The main work for the year is done, guys.
Excellent job chairing this committee, Betty. I have to compliment you on your dedication to the town.
Oh,
Yeah.
and to all of you, thank you very much. And a couple of you are going to get together with other people. I think Tim with Tony Vieira and so forth. I don't know about anybody else, but you're certainly welcome to talk to people. I appreciate it. The next meeting is in February, unless we don't have it, February 9th at 6:30. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Oh,
Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second it.
All in favor?
hey.
Aye. Thank you very much, everybody.